Hello, species value nature. Hello, victims. It is time with the N.R.A. to divide or to break them. I was on their side until they spoke now because I was waiting. Because inside fact treatment nature we have a breach. Let just one teach. All these issues are recorded. They were confessed to me offensively. Tied to recorded raised men and women degenerates. An Inspector Mike with Weathersfield Fire Department in town offices recorded and confessed with sex offenders associated with New Britain, with interbranch actors on off campuses, courts, interbranch, and collusion through evidence rackets using courts and doctors to hurt kids. Totally stacked on off in campus illusions. By the way, I don't know how there was a house I got everyone making these confessions, everything that got demonstrated. I don't know if it had anything to do with it. It's near the houses. Forget that. On Maple Street. I don't know their names either. I never had a problem with them, but that's right in between the houses, connected 3 houses and others, intercity through time. And with the child sex offender cliques that were recorded and confessed tied to worse, connected untimely deaths, drug crimes with overt gangs, and with undercovers juxtaposed and unrealized, and the unrealized predicate acts and motivations to collusion with this. And this is necessary to explain because these are people with ties to CCSU and to Trinity College, Wesleyan College, UConn, with on-off campuses, policing, interbranch, investigate, and foreign juxtaposed. All different natures of that, of evidence reception. As evidence reception bodies, this is a body of value conversation about identity per the species value nature system. Per the value, where our value of fact treatment nature is in relationship to what is going to cause evolution or de-evolution, which is science. See, we have pseudoscience defended because that's what the job is told, to spot, because we were lifted as a trap with a tactically ulterior from actual value nature system, where and how simultaneously we're only value as fact treatment nature as nature, which is important because nature has a nature relationship to itself that is, again, a system that we are a tactical ulterior from for fact treatment nature. So what the guy was sensing about the nature of Marco Rubio that he wants to love is that he's on the American side of what every modern nation doesn't understand, because this came before modern nations, knowing that it engineered an edifice of lie progressions engineered together as lie progression nature itself. And already worse than that over here, through the intersciences, space maintained this way. Value nature system, tactically ulterior from important too, a tactically ulterior from natural, relationship to nature, from a tactically denatured relationship to nature. And it tactically denatured relationship to itself, they tactically denatured the soils. Tactically cultivated the fact treatment nature value of the systems, potting soils, the experts, fact treatment nature, what our value nature system only can afford, not by accident, because means is a system other. And so anyway, these are people tied to a Joey Quest and other people that say they're with Los Solitos and mixed with undercovers, but they're also juxtaposed with overt sex offenders, real or undercover, but they're recorded and confessed with actual, anyways, more, including related to the recently sentenced principal sex offender And this is also including, this is related to the Samuel Dix house and the fire department's positions in relationship to that when I was running. Recorded and confessed involved with people with crimes with the Leahy family. And others that forged names, pretend I had conversations where I said people were chasing me. And they said I had conversations about agencies. These are federal crimes of different natures. They're also crimes. They attach me to fake conversations about legal cases they have ties to federal criminals and their kids. And within as recorded crime methods and accidents be through time that I'm not reported like others because they're stacking databases with people that don't even go to the schools. They go private schools. Each side of the high school recorded and confessed involved with interbranch evidence reception crimes through time. With people that go to different schools and with interbranch families that raise recorded victim predators associated as sex offender cliques, recorded interbranch in military, and further recorded and confessed, tied to the principal sex offender just recently sentenced. And insulation, they're even online. Look how Trinity College, they have the obfuscate. You can't get a contact because they're using that for online off campuses. Courts covering up various natures of courts recorded and confessed raised as victim predators. Now this came to them with online systemic rape threats sequentially through time tied to these people. With the strangers, also with Lena's Pizza, recorded and confessed involved with people from Covington Street, or recorded and confessed involved with evidence of crimes and coercions, coercions of each age of fact treatment nature, through juxtapositions of families of different kinds of police, and overt and undercover and mixed and all like that, and they share their girlfriends with overt federal criminals. As everyone as victim predators, the nature of New Britain. This isn't tied to the treatments of Paul Manafort, recorded criminally foreign influenced, internation too, per how we share other nations associated with the campuses, involved with like a Scalora family, confessed and recorded involved with police crimes through time, and with medical doctors and with drugs and with other kind of drug crimes. And tied to untimely death that brought up his relationship to on and off campuses, further recorded and confessed worse than the principal sex offender recently sentenced with the same campus. And that was really bad stuff. And this is worse. And these are interbranch tied actors through time too, victims advocates tied to these people. Chris Walters recorded and confessed through time. So then when I went to report the online rape threats and the on-off campuses, a whole bunch of students were coerced by police forms, foreign and domestic families here. Whatever their narrative, they can't put anything in paper. They faked it through time too, tied to this. So I went to go report it at the school. I asked to see the teacher. The guy, he said no. So I went to leave, and the guy wouldn't let me leave. He said, "Oh," and he kept asking me why. I want. I said, "That's all right." He said, "No, hold on." I was perfect, fine behavior. You know what I'm saying? And this guy was like, English chair. And the other one past that recorded tied to the sex offender clique here, with crimes recorded and confessed further unrealized, tied to their roles with database solution stacking when I was in grammar school. Same people I had nothing to do with in middle school and high school, and every exception exploited, criminally recorded, per interbranch families, internation. Drug cliques and stuff like that. We have like all kinds of time and positions with their relationship. There's also tied to confessions of their roles with trade center families, victims. Before they were victims, they don't understand. Nobody knows because speaking. They were listening to what Joe DeMora was telling him. He was confessed and recorded with others. He said he was involved with doctors when he was a kid, and with their roles with drugs. He said a Mendez family was. I only know them from them walking up with nonverbal and verbal confessions, or demonstrations of and written, recorded crimes, pretended that things were recorded that are not, because they've been covering up their roles with I recorded them involved. I didn't even know them. I saw his face one time. He walked in my classroom because Joe DeMoro had directed him to have a conversation about me and make me know him from hearing about him before he did that. Then I never see him again. But that makes a fact treatment trick that they exploit. These people, these were like, they also stacked the names, so they stacked motivations for people to have sensibilities in collusion with the branches together. You need to hurt people by stacking database solutions and not letting that demonstrated through time, attaching everyone to fake words, fake sequences, fake relationships to others. There's a Joshua Julian also recorded and confessed involved with harassment with people with the sexual threats and rapes and forced concepts like that into the minds of the youngest kids with the grammar school of the sex offender before that, and with the untimely deaths that brought up the confessions about this. And I had insights into it because they were confessed as strangers to me and recorded involved with it criminally when I was a kid. They didn't follow the rules when I recorded them with the drug dealing confessions from people I don't know I know of, and only in context recorded and criminally confessed involved with this, like a Joe Lombardo, a Chris Walters, a Mike Pandoff, a Jerry Kerr, two Jerry Kerrs, I don't know their mother's name, associated with Travelers insurance. In other words, insurance people, because on off campuses, on off businesses, on off private, exploited, also on off investments of money streams and policing of that. We have, like when Mr. Rubio talks about, he's talking about, in other words, if we ban the AR-15 or whatever it's called, then what about the AK-47? And then we're going to ban that here, so they're going to take their markets over where? It's a nature, our nature's relationship to itself. We have to deal with fact treatment nature. See, we have the N.R.A. recorded sick, but recorded also supported by what is the front that we need in a, overall simultaneous with the finite. See, their roles as a fake defense of the finite. Because this is where we need our Constitution. When he says mental health, that guy's mentally ill. You know what I'm saying? Recorded ways, many ways. And they're starting fights like this. This is tied to database illusion stacking through time. Now listen to this, because this with exploited. This is why the child abuses aren't any being reported through time. Even online, especially the online ones, interbranch recorded. ERICKNER, also recorded and confessed, involved with people intercity through time, with New Britain Superior Court, with Hartford Superior Court, and in probate courts, and judges and their family members, recorded with database illusion stacking. Mike DelFero, John, and brothers of his. I had nothing to do with it. I only know them from their confessions. They sought me out to make, tied to their roles with the recorded KKK theme, and Latin and Italian Joe DeMoro drug clicks. And then they make up, pretend with, there's also a Chris Hector. I keep getting them out I don't know if it's from the real crystal hecta. I never had a class with crystal hecta. I never had nothing to do with them. The people tied to the Joe DeMauro and Ray Clough confessed and recorded crime rolls since they were a kid, pretending in backgrounds that they knew me with people like Joshua Julian and Subby Scalora and Phil Clough. Recorded and confessed, going to my mother, pretending he was my friend growing up and stuff like that. With real estate crimes, also recorded and confessed with investigators, undercovers, interbranch actors associated with, and military associated with, and foreign associated with Heather Hansen. And these are people involved with the roles with child abuses, with evidence reception bodies, and crime methods recorded in my area, relevant. Also to federal criminals that were associated with the 9/11 context and with their kids and with their relationships to other kids in the same age and classes with those kids, tied to the database delusion stacking, tied to criminally exploited placements in my classrooms with people like I never even had a conversation with. Then they recorded online with shifting federal crimes because they're shifting, sequence shifts used to justify what demonstrates is lie. As the value of federal crime, where people are slandering others so they can't defend themselves and themselves and others from rackets with child abusers, where they're attaching the whole family members and everyone to slanders, fake conversations, faking writing, and not allowing writing through time, because so they're forcing sustained mental abuses of women and kids through the women and kid investigators and doctors recorded with sex crimes in the form attaching their victims and their victims' family members to fake conversations with and as people invested with courts, with their databases and with their fact treatments where they tell them not to speak medical information. So we have this as original state breaching method, maintained offensively and some and preemptively making evidence fabrication. So there's a Detective Samuda. I never had a conversation with him in my life. He walked up to us and made confessions, a number of confessions about his roles with police forms on off campus, private and other intercity police, recorded in collusion, stacking multiple fake police reports for the same arrest, recorded as all kinds of federal crimes to prevent and to torture someone not to report recorded reality. In other words, they're clapped dead to rights with the people behind the Joey Quest name and the confessions of my neighbors here tied to it with interbranch police, retired detectives in standing, interbranch with the sex offenders as the sex offender clicks. And as the neighbors that moved in recorded and confessed associated with the same retired detectives. His neighbors also recorded and confessed as strangers to me. See, when they put people with confessions like that, it's for a crime method that has having them pretend they had conversations later, and they're attaching people to fake words all the time into databases. Like the Detective Samuda never had a conversation with my life. He walked up to us in the court, recorded and confessed, involved already through that time with child abuse crimes in cases in there. This is also tied to proven 9/11 sequence shift with people in Manhattan context, also tied to crimes recorded and confessed tied to treatments of a case in a district court in Connecticut. Didn't say it specifically, but they mentioned the court police with Covington Street and involved with the coercion of the different police forms, like a Greek guy. Never met him. He was repeated, recorded and confessed, involved with coercions of women, of his roles with strippers and stuff like that, where they're using that, and then where they share sexual partners and like with federal criminals, the police forms, foreign and domestic, juxtaposed. There's like the value nature system's ill. It hasn't reached out to everybody because the fact cheap natures, the value of it is fake. So it can't reach out to all areas too. In other words, can't use correlation. The finite, active body, and overall value is all liars, all knaves. You can't defend that and then defend us at the same time from the nature of criminal insidiousness that built this as a method to exploit perpetually our fact-shaping nature's value. So the N.R.A. is recorded and confessed involved with crimes that have nothing to do with in other words, with mental health care, is recorded and confessed with women and through a method motivating a number of women to stay experts of police and of child abuse and stuff like that, and of elderly to stay victim predators against those ages of fact treatment nature per method, exploiting how everyone's reliant upon compartmentalized treatments of types of crimes, whereas the problem is by one juxtaposing natures of crimes. See now, when this detective Samuda I never had a conversation with walked up and made all these real fast too, and then that's it. Confessions. So then he has to go pretend other. He confessed that he was he used to work at or still does work at a hospital in Hartford, not Hartford Hospital, another one, he said. And that's where he's recorded and confessed involved with the police, with these places, stacking people, the fake, pretending they were in there and mental evaluations and stuff like that, and had conversations with doctors that never were. They also do this at Hartford Hospital too. But this guy was one of the people with a fake police report. They put fake police report. There's also a guy from East Hartford, because I went to CCSU to report what had already been recorded. They've been thwarting my ability to report it by juxtaposing different natures of crimes and different crime actors. And so, in other words, that's the method of crime here. And confessions is tied to this, and acts is tied to this, because they're not letting crime acts reported. They're confessed using interbranch police in collusion and foreign ones and doctors with uses of Weathersfield Facebook page for worse child predator acts since before and sustained on off campus with the school of the principal sex offender just reported. So there's also confessions of their insights into like treatments of bump stocks and stuff like that, and conversations with kids with the groups like that are recorded, raised already, proven sex offenders tied into branch, tied to Stop and Shop policing, the brother of one and the mother of one further recorded and confessed involved with the rest of the men sick with the kids and with the retired detectives and with Stop and Shops, with other people from my town, with evidence perception by they have people walk by you and then, you know, they already have interbranch actors needed to cover up their life progressions tied to this, tied to offensive confessions, and then they do other tied to their crime methods and acts and cases recorded. And with prisons, and because the prisons, the Sandy Hook investigators and stewards of their prison recorded and confessed with online crime and with off-campus crime rolls and crimes and cases tied to the sex offender principal campus through time, tied to their recorded and confessed roles with various natures of abuses of the daughter of the principal when I was there. Afterwards, I never had a conversation with her in my life. The only conversation I ever had with a Kevin Harris, which was like nonverbal. You know, we never really had a conversation because he started a fight with me. He punched me. I went like that. I blocked it. I punched him lightly, and that was it. It didn't hurt. He just fell down, but he didn't get hurt. You know. Then that was recorded and confessed. Involved with them with database delusion stacking at Quinnipiac. Involved, recorded and confessed with crimes with intercity on off campus with different kinds of private police, all kinds, because they grew up with crime rolls with federal criminals and with agencies and their family members. Recorded and confessed, criminally involved with this. They bring it up too. And they pretend I had these conversations about things. They also pretend I had conversations about police surveillance equipment, forging names. One doctor confessed that they did this. It's also recorded. Like a doctor, and then they have the really sick foreign homeland. Medical doctors, they don't talk to you. They're involved, recorded and confessed with crimes with judges, hurting people's fact treatment nature to cover their life progressions and their crimes with areas, with the rest of the recorded sex offenders tied to the ones in my area, into the principal. In other words, attaching me to fake conversations recorded that never were, forging names of the other doctors too. There's a Leahy family. Then they have the whole women in the family too, involved with the different positions, and with the triage where they have it like they're associated with court drug clicks through time, per their people tied to them too, confessions from strangers, sequentially, because tied to CCSU has more than a dozen ties to people that were involved with crimes, with drugs and with evidences tied to that, illusions that were orchestrated them, taken to their motivations by who raised them to positions on and off campus with the police, and like Carone brothers with DMV. I forgot the other name of a guy. People associated with Joshua Julian in wrestling. He says he was a famous wrestler or whatever. I don't know anything about him. I didn't even realize he was in wrestling. I went to like 3 wrestling things, recorded and confessed, tied. Me encouraged to go there by the people tied with the rest of the recorded sex offenders, as the ones tied to the ones already with it, like a John Mayana. And fake news. WFSB reported and confessed involved faking both sides of stories. And John Mayano, other people like a Fienzo family also recorded and confessed with evidence crime rolls with child predators, male and female, and with the retired detectives associated with the former and the past neighbor recorded and confessed involved with them, and with the other sex offenders proven. And a Bob Chase said a Phil Claw, also recorded and confessed, pretending that he knew me through time. He tried to film 2 times illusions pretending other, if they filmed that. And then one time he was standing in the distance and with a female vice principal or principal, and they looked at me, and that was recorded and confessed. In other words, from a distance, there was on off campus people directing the schools to be victim predators, stacking illusions and databases tied to their training of all kinds of police and with all kinds of police with programs interbranch that are covering up life progressions from their roles with crime methods and acts and cases and finite overall body of value lies through time, formal. Then have life progressions maintained by a breaching method. So you get arrested for trying to talk about reality, and they don't tell you what they're stacking in the databases. They just keep, in other words, they're using, that's why there's a hypertension. They're forcing needed by, because they need to cover up life progressions tied to the original database crime. Samuel Dick's house was originally tied to database tied laws where if anyone was meant to even be discussing about building infrastructure outside of internation monitored database relationships, they hurt those people and their whole family, scare people. Everyone's fact sheet nature was a slave. You see what I'm saying? So American history becomes here because also George Washington had to leave slavery entrenched in Wethersfield right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. We had to meet with the French general here, slept in Wethersfield, Connecticut. Hartford, Connecticut, tied to Trinity College. It was first George Washington College. Tied to slavery in Hartford. That was his slavery too, but he had to leave it. Because it was an engineering, an artifice of life progression, cover up nature's needs and roles, as tools blaming on other as breaching nature weapons. Formal, areas maintain interscience. Then branches, everything's already from a base for shared police, with their victim predator pseudo sophistication. Relationship to the same bad education, on and off campus method, hurt each age of fact sheet nature, each person, group, together sequentially, per method against correlation, where we are value multi-from, finite, active, body of value. We have to have one course, and we have to have what sabotages convictions, in other words, what exploits and makes exceptions to exploit. Now we need a nature and quality of fact sheet nature prevented. We need to have the nature of the shared pseudo sophistication of every modern nation demonstrated. We need to have pseudo-ratiocination. We have to have pseudo-semantics and semantics discerned distinctly. So because we have, they say, Professor, I don't know if he's a professor, Senator Rubio is, he was trying to have a quality of fact sheet nature. They're not letting the time, because the time is recorded, criminally used breaching weapon. And in other words, there's no justifications of it, and a lot of things simultaneously. And that's tied to premises that are ignoring that. And when and while everyone's justifying that, the whole time I've been asking to report crime acts. The whole time they've been stacking more and more names to offensive confessions, like Detective Samuda, involved with intercity recorded. He doesn't even know what he doesn't know me, pretend he did. Now he doesn't even know what he's did, because this is Chris Walters also recorded and confessed with all kinds of crimes with men and women. We use the name Bobby with drugs and with car thefts and stuff like that, real or made up, involved with their roles with each side of the Wethersfield High School, recorded and confessed with federal criminals that are associated, that were raised by interbranch families and agencies with crimes and cases with federal criminals that hadn't been proven at the time. But it's worse what they were doing, and how and what it is, because they only understand each branch through lie progression, cover up nature's needs, as victim predators facilitating to this. And this is recorded. WFSB is not letting, is offensive. Take my voice, attach me to fake sides of both stories before ever talking to me, then pretending afterwards when I try to tell them fix the fake news, that they pretend they can't understand me. See, then now they're motivated to rules for everyone to pretend they're using mental illness as in other words, people are sharing that because they're juxtaposed to natures of crime that are completely federal crimes, that are completely verbal, in conjunction with interbranch database illusion stacking, torture, which is tied to the federal crimes at the level where each modern nation's agencies are recorded predators against, breaching tools. So they to pretend that they were against that, they're recorded offensively preparing to pretend that the presidents are involved with obstruction of justice. Like with that's what's demonstrated most plausible with their treatments of the Manafort issues, because they need to do that to hide through what they've been the recorded hiding through administrations about their roles with the street right that goes right